Back in 1971, something happened that didn't make big headlines at the time, but reprogrammed how the entire world functions.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
President Nixon, in a late summer announcement, ended the dollar's link to gold. Until then, the US dollar had been tied to a fixed amount of gold, giving it a physical backbone. Once that connection was severed, the dollar became what we now call a fiat currency, value backed by nothing more than the belief that it's worth something. This shift didn't cause an overnight collapse. In fact, it created room to grow. Policymakers had more flexibility. Money could be printed, loans could be made, and economies could expand without waiting for a stash of gold to be dug up. But just like stretching a rubber band, that flexibility comes with tension. The more you stretch it, the more likely it snaps. Here's where it gets tricky. Because we're not just talking about the US economy here. The US dollar became the world's reserve currency. That means countries all around the world price things in dollars, borrow in dollars, trade in dollars. From coffee beans in Colombia to oil in the Middle East, the dollar is the glue. And to meet that global demand, the US has to keep exporting dollars. But dollars don't just float overseas by magic. They leave the country when we buy more than we sell. For nearly 5 decades, the US has run a trade deficit. We import way more than we export. TVs from South Korea, shoes from Vietnam, microchips, toys, and electronics from China. And where do those dollars go? Into foreign hands. Those countries then often reinvest them back into the US, buying up bonds, stocks, even real estate. There's only one problem. We print those dollars out of thin air and we import real goods and services in exchange. This worked so far because the US was the military superpower. Don't like our printed dollars? Here's some democracy for you.
The United States, you have to think, what's our net export? What do us, as the world reserve currency issuer, export to the rest of the world? The answer is the currency itself. If you're going to take on the role of being the world reserve currency, that implies everyone needs it as a product, because the world reserve currency is how you price goods and services. So it means it's how you borrow, right? It means it's how you do intercurrency exchange. There's not enough liquidity for the Ghanaian cedi and the Nigerian naira to have direct liquidity for cross-border transfers. You go from your foreign currency to the dollar, and then from the dollar to your foreign currency. So the world is constantly in demand for dollars, no matter how much they like or dislike the United States, no matter their trade balance, no matter anything. If it's the world reserve currency and it carries the liquidity and the unit of account and all the network effects, everyone needs dollars.
While we were busy printing dollars, we hollowed out our manufacturing. China did the opposite. They started building stuff. They have the manufacturing capacity and resources. They are the world's factory. China produces all the things we actually consume, even our military equipment. While the US became the world's buyer-in-chief, China became the supplier. Over the last 4 decades, China transformed itself into the factory of the world. Today, it produces almost a third of all manufactured goods globally. That's more than the US, Japan, and Germany combined. Need solar panels? China. Smartphones? China. Medical equipment, machine parts, steel, you get the idea. And it doesn't stop there. China is the #1 trading partner for over 100 countries. They don't just supply stuff. They build roads, fund ports, invest in developing nations. Their influence stretches from Southeast Asia to Africa to Europe. They even have the upper hand on rare earth minerals, those obscure elements that power everything from electric cars to missiles. China mines them, refines them, and ships them. The US, not so much. Now imagine a standoff, the world's biggest consumer versus the world's biggest producer. The US threatens tariffs, China responds with restrictions. We flex financial power, they flex supply chains. It's not a movie trailer, it's the daily reality of geopolitics. But here's the rub. While politicians posture and markets wobble, something deeper is happening under the surface. The United States isn't just playing catch-up with China's manufacturing muscle, It's struggling with its own internal contradictions.
So the United States of America runs what's called a twin deficit. We constantly are exporting more dollars than we're bringing in. It's a very fancy and complicated way of saying we run the country unprofitably. Okay, we print more dollars than we earn. So we constantly are growing our debt.
We talk about trade wars, but we rarely talk about the math behind them. Because for every dollar that goes out to pay for imports, someone has to want to bring it back in. That usually means foreign buyers purchasing U.S. debt. Right now, the U.S. government owes more than ever before. Every year, we spend more than we collect in taxes. That shortfall, the budget deficit, has become a permanent feature, not a temporary blip. This is what economists call the twin deficits problem. A trade deficit and a budget deficit growing side by side. They feed off each other. The more we import, the more dollars flow out. The more we borrow to fund government programs, the more we rely on those dollars coming back. But the loop only works as long as the world believes the U.S. is a safe bet, that our money is solid, that our promises hold up. And here's where things get fragile. Because when trust is the product, perception becomes reality. In September, the U.S. government announced a rare surplus, saying we brought in more than we spent. Sounds great, right? But a closer look showed accounting quirks, odd categories like negative spending, and huge drops in areas like Medicare and veterans benefits. It felt more like creative math than economic health. Meanwhile, inflation pressures remain. The cost of living has gone up. Interest payments on the debt are rising. And yet, we keep spending. We print more. We borrow more. Because we have to. There's no other easy path. The economy's wired to need more money, more credit, more debt. It's like an engine that only runs if you keep pumping fuel, but the tank has a slow leak. So where does that leave us? Well, for one, it leaves us with a paradox. We're the richest nation in history, but we manufacture less and borrow more. We have unmatched financial power, but rely on rivals for critical resources. We lead the global economy, but lead with chronic deficits that require constant printing.
They print narratives. The narrative is tariffs are working. We're solving this problem. We're coming from a position of strength. And you know what is so embarrassing is so many people on the internet believe this guck and garbage.
When you can't print productivity, you print stories. You tell the world things are fine. You point to accounting tricks. You say the deficit is shrinking, the tariffs are working, the trade balance is improving. But deep down, the math tells a different tale. And the conclusion? Simple. The United States has to keep printing more and more money to fund its deficits, to maintain global liquidity, to keep the machine humming. It's not a conspiracy. It's the logic of the system, built into its DNA since 1971. So what does that mean for us? It means we need to pay attention, to question the headlines, to understand the flows, to realize that while the dollar still dominates, its foundation is no longer gold, but confidence. And confidence, once shaken, is hard to rebuild. If this opened your eyes, dig deeper. Look at the numbers behind the narratives, follow the patterns, and maybe ask yourself, what would a monetary system look like if it didn't rely on trust alone? Because in the end, that question might define the next chapter of the global economy.